the question is never, well, I think he or she is a thought leader because she has so much knowledge and expertise. No, the answer is always because this person triggered me to think differently about topics that matter to me. Don't just start to write white papers and so on, but have a vision behind that. And if you develop that vision and turn that into a narrative and then make a structure of this is how we are going to tell that narrative through all kinds of thought leadership pieces, then you have something that's much more sustainable.
So, Mignon, how should businesses read and apply your book for their company's benefit?
An important challenge that we see a lot at companies is that companies are stuck in a reactive cycle of messaging. We see, I don't know how you see that, Pavan, but I see very often two types of leaders. Leaders who say, I don't have to communicate, doesn't fit me as a person. And you have leaders who are saying, yes, I think it's very important as a leader to communicate. And in that group, there are even two types. We see that companies who have been too focused on just their shareholders, or just only their clients, they have missed out on a lot of opportunities or had a lot of reputation risk. People are asking them, okay, what is your opinion on inclusivity? What is your opinion on circular economy? What are you going to do about this and this and that? And what we see that they don't have an answer to that, because they haven't developed a clear narrative on their role on important themes in society. So, and I think communication professionals can help to shift that, can help their leaders to realize we need to shift our messaging from reactive to proactive by thinking about our narrative. Thinking about a novel point of view brings you further in your communications. Only talking about your knowledge and expertise, that's not really distinguishing. But if you start talking about fresh perspectives that trigger your clients to think differently about those themes, then you have a conversation going on.
What does real, meaningful purpose in leadership look like? And how should leaders integrate it without losing sight of financial results? Hello and welcome to CommsCast, the Reputation podcast powered by Adfactors PR from MediaWeave.com. I'm your host and friend Pavan R. Chawla, and I'm delighted and honored to share that our distinguished guest today is a truly respected international communications practitioner, academician, trainer, and a remarkable author of one of the best books on the crucial subject of thought leadership and societal change, Mignon van Halderen. Mignon, thank you for being on the show. Welcome to the show all the way from Utrecht in the Netherlands, virtually.
Thank you for inviting me, Pavan.
You're very, very welcome. And this is a fantastic book she's written. We'll be talking a lot about this because this book is really going to help every communications practitioner and every corporate leader, big or small, whatever the size of their company in India or anywhere else in the world. And a lot of people do watch and listen to our podcast. So thank you once again, Mignon, for being on the show. And right. So, Mignon, you've done so many things. What is it that you're doing now? What keeps you engaged full time?
Yeah. Well, I've always been at the intersection of academia, business life, and executive education. And that's in fact what I still do. Although currently my role as partner at the Reputation Group, I'm mostly focused on the business side.
Wonderful. So, Mignon, first, tell us about this excellent book that you've written. All about the book, if you would please. How much time did it take to write? Why you thought of writing it?
Yeah, we started writing it because thought leadership has been a term that we've been seeing popping up lately, over the past decade, I guess. And there are a lot of interpretations to thought leadership. And we felt that we had to give it more flesh to the bones of the concept. So we wrote this book for leaders and communication professionals, um, help them see what thought leadership is, but also what it can do for their organization, why it is irrelevant in these days, and how to pursue it.
Excellent, excellent. And when I must tell my viewers, my audiences, our audiences, that when Mignon says we, she is referring to her co-author. She is named first as one of the two authors, Mignon van Halderen and Brandon Martens. So, what was it like writing a book together and a book about thought leadership, about aspects that you have to express very, I guess, subjectively also, you know?
So yeah, we had to color it in in that sense. No, that was really fascinating. It's such a joy to write it with somebody else because we had so many conversation, we had deadlines, we worked in the office, we worked both in our houses, we worked in restaurants and bars, and well, it has been such a delight to do that together. Is a partner in crime with the same interest in a certain topic, yeah, then you're both in a flow.
So, how did it go in terms of uh, it's like co thinking first and then expressing it in your own way? So,
Yeah.
how did this meeting of the minds and the output of those met minds crystallize into a manuscript?
Well, first of all, I must say, during that time, I was still an associate professor at an applied university here in the Netherlands, and Bran was in my team. So we studied the concept already for a few years. So we had a lot of material. So in the book, you see a lot of practical case studies of, Hospital, Bernhoven, Ørsted, and Unilever, a couple of companies. And we dived into those companies. So we did a lot of qualitative research. And that helped us, yeah, to form our vision on thought leadership.
Let's now step back, Mignon, and look at the very concept itself. You
Yeah.
say that thought leadership is fuzzy. You know, where does the fuzziness lie?
I think the fuzziness lies in the fact that thought leadership is often seen as something that you can claim. Like we are thought leaders, we have the best thought leadership in the house. Look at websites and you see that a lot. Pride ourselves on the caliber of our thought leadership, those kind of things. You see it a lot. And we felt like if you treat thought leadership like that, it becomes hollow. It doesn't say a lot. So why not look at thought leadership in the sense of, hey, if I find somebody thought leading, now thought leadership is in the eye of the beholder. It's not that I find myself thought leading, somebody else would experience you as a thought leader. So we have asked students, people like you, communication professionals, leaders, we've often asked them the question, who do you think is a thought leader in your view, and why is that? And then the question is never, well, I think he or she is a thought leader because she has so much knowledge and expertise. No, the answer is always because this person triggered me to think differently about topics that matter to me. And that's in our view, an important aspect of thought leadership, being able to trigger other people with a novel point of view on an important themes.
You mentioned that you've asked a lot of youngsters, younger people, and they said that this person writes about and makes me act or think differently about topics that matter to me. What kind of recurring topics came up in those discussions?
Yeah, that can be very personal. Maybe you might remember Dove, the brand Dove, from the shampoos and so. And they had this novel point of view on beauty, our perception of beauty. And that was an important topic during that time for a lot of young women, daughters, and young mothers who felt that our whole view on beauty is distorted, through social media and so on. So, and they had another point of view that our perception of beauty is biased and that we should look different at what beauty means and that beauty comes from internal and so on. And with that point of view, they triggered a whole new conversation with their consumers, but also with psychologists, with school teachers, and so on. That was a nice example by then about thought leadership. But sometimes the topics are much bigger. I mean, climate change, uh, inclusivity, those societal topics are important today. And we see companies taking a stance on that. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. What are the biggest challenges that communications professionals face today? You know, and what are some mistakes or missed opportunities you notice? Mignon.
What I think, Pavan, is that an important challenge that we see a lot at companies is that companies are stuck in a reactive cycle of messaging. There are many teams coming to them, and people are asking them, "Okay, what is your opinion on inclusivity? What is your opinion on circular economy? What are you going to do about this and this and that?" Well, we see that they don't have an answer to that because they haven't developed a clear narrative on their role on important teams in society. So, and I think communication professionals can help to shift that, can help their leaders to realize we need to shift our messaging from reactive to proactive by thinking about our narrative.
Absolutely. And narratives can change and shift according to the need of the hour, the need of what's happening in society. And when you see Dove talking about an angle of beauty which really hits and sits well with everybody, then
Yeah.
that's transactionally thinking about purpose. So, no, excellent, Mignon. Mignon, the biggest direct and important responsibility of every CEO or business head is the balance sheet.
Hmm.
And the bottom line, simply put, my question is in two parts. First, what does real, meaningful purpose in leadership look like? And how should leaders integrate it without losing sight of financial results?
Well, Pavan, let's first come to your first question. And it may not be the answer that you would expect to hear, but to me, purpose is a difficult term because at the moment we are living in a quite a polarized world. And to some people, some leaders, purpose is something that to me isn't a very good purpose. And the problem with purpose is that we start to see purpose. If you have a purpose, then it would be good. But there are a lot of people in organizations who have a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. So I don't see purposeful companies uh, that's always positive. If we talk about social purpose, yeah, then indeed we do see that thought leadership can be a very nice way of thinking to to think about how can we progress our role in when it comes to certain types of societal teams. And yeah, then thought leadership is very interesting in that sense because you were talking about the balance sheet. In thought leadership, you can look at it in two ways. There's a business logic behind thought leadership, like, if we express our voice better, if we show our clients more that we understand the teams that they are working on, then we are being seen as the top voice on those teams, and people see us as the preferred partner and come to us. The other side of looking at thought leadership is this societal aspect. Like, okay, as a company, you have a role to play in society. It's not just business, you also have this role to play on important teams in society. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to take that role? And what do we want to change when it comes to circularity or renewable energies or water management, healthcare? And there we see, and that's what we try to describe in the book, that companies who take a step further on that constantly have to balance their financial KPIs with those societal KPIs. And there's not one five-step way to do that. It's sometimes it's a process of 2 steps further, 1 step back. And that's what we try to show in the book as well. We tried to open up the challenges that these companies faced in doing that.
Mignon, in your book, you describe the foundation, the process, and the practice of thought leadership. So, why don't you share one important learning from each that leaders will find most useful? First, the
Yeah.
foundation, then the process, and then the practice.
Well, when it comes to the foundation, what we say in the book, if you start working on your thought leadership, think about what is our novel point of view on the teams that matter to us and our stakeholders. Because thinking about a novel point of view brings you further in your communications. You know, only talking about your knowledge and expertise, that's not really distinguishing. But if you start talking about fresh perspectives that trigger your clients to think differently about those teams, then you have a conversation going on. So, to us, that's very important when it comes to the foundation. And then you were also asking about the process. That means in terms of process, start working on your narrative. What is our narrative in certain teams? And see that as the backbone of your communications. When it comes to practice, you can think about practice in the sense that, you know, your narrative should be aligned with what you do in your organization, but you can also think about how are we going to make sure through communications and PR to let our voices be heard better.
Wonderful. Mignon, give us one or two examples where thought leadership drove positive societal change, and also explain why you say it is not a holy grail course, but still an important tool when applied with authenticity.
Yeah. Well, it's not that the organizations that we looked at really had the influence to change society, you know, that would be too big of a shoe to take on. But, for instance, one of the cases in our book is a hospital, and this hospital, was saying, "Listen, if we look at the healthcare system, at least here in the Netherlands," I don't know how that is in India, Pavan, but here in the Netherlands, healthcare costs are rising and rising. If we go on with that, 8 out of the 10 people in the Netherlands should work in healthcare to be able to treat everybody. So that's a big, big problem. And this organization said, "Okay," or this hospital said, "Okay, we wanna change our business to see how we can, in fact, deliver better healthcare by doing less." And that's strange. That's a novel point of view. How can you do better healthcare by doing less? But that's in fact, what they did. And by doing so, they became an inspiration for a new hospital model for a lot of other hospitals. So in fact, you know, did they have a positive influence on society? Well, in a certain way, in a certain way, because they showed other hospitals, hey, there's also another way of organizing our healthcare, and maybe that could be an inspiration for other hospitals as well.
Excellent. Excellent. This is CommsCast, a reputation podcast powered by Adfactors PR. I'm Pavan R. Chawla. With me is the wonderful Mignon van Halderen. Mignon, why should professionals and students read your book on thought leadership?
Well, I think leaders and communication professionals should read it because we need more thought leadership in organizations. And we see a lot of leaders and communication professionals searching for ways to pursue thought leadership. And that's what I think we try to do in the book to show that it's more than marketing and PR, that there's, in fact, a strategic way of thinking behind thought leadership. And if you do that, your thought leadership has much more impact societally, but I think also business wise.
More strength to you, Mignon. And I hope readers and people do actually read this book because I've seen it and it's really, really wonderful. So, Mignon, how should businesses read and apply your book for their company's benefit?
Yeah, good question. I hope they read it as their playbook. You know, you can read it on a Sunday, just in once. But you could also use it, first of all, to get to understand the idea behind thought leadership better. What is it? Why is it important to really look at it from a leadership level, and then get back to the book. How do I develop my novel points of view? What is necessary to do that? How can I use my leadership communication in such a way that our thought leadership is being expressed in a right way? How do I engage with my stakeholders to, yeah, kind of collaborate with them on the important themes that are, important to our organization as well as to our stakeholders. So I hope to see that as a playbook in which you say, every time I'm going back to this practical case or that practical case, to be inspired and just to look into the kitchen of other organizations who tried to do a similar step.
Excellent. Excellent. Mignon, how this sounds like a rhetorical question, but I'm not asking it for effect. I want to hear it from you. How important has societal benefit work been for the reputation of companies, and why?
Yeah, it's extremely important. We see that it's becoming more and more important because, you know, um, society is an important stakeholder. And if you neglect society, and with society, I mean you and I, people like you and I, and we, especially in the Netherlands, but I also think worldwide, and you must have some examples in India too. We see that companies who have been too focused on just their shareholders, or just only their clients, they have missed out on a lot of opportunities or had a lot of reputation risk because they didn't think about people living around their factories, for instance, or people who are negatively affected by your products, and so on. So, yeah, your reputation is something that you need to be very proud of, but you need to protect it by looking at all your stakeholders, listening to all those different types of stakeholders.
Excellent. In how you impact their lives, just beyond just the transaction of the relationship of buying and selling.
Yeah.
So, Mignon, what is one practical step leaders can start with today to begin their thought leadership journey?
Yeah. Yeah. Very good question. Start with thinking about your narrative. I think there's, in so many leaders, there's potential to communicate more. And you have what we see. I don't know how you see that, Pavan, but I see very often two types of leaders. Leaders who say, "I don't have to communicate; it doesn't fit me as a person." And you have leaders who are saying, "Yes, I think it's very important as a leader to communicate." And in that group, there are even two types: some who do it very easily, and some who need some encouragement. And that always starts with thinking about, what is my narrative that links to who I am and to the organization that I work for. And working on that narrative, you shouldn't underestimate that. That's you need to take time for that with your communication professional. You need to find good language for it. It needs to be personal and connected to your business goals and societal goals.
Really wonderful advice, Minya. As you know, this is CommsCast, the Reputation podcast powered by Adfactors PR. So, what is the single most important message you would like listeners and viewers to take away from our conversation, Minya?
That's a very good question. Well, I think when you are working on thought leadership in your company, or you hear the term thought leadership popping up in your company, take a step back and think about, what do we mean here with thought leadership? Because the term is used very randomly. But if you really go a step back and ask your colleagues or your leaders, what is it that we want to achieve with thought leadership? And then start from there, you have a much stronger conversation on thought leadership. Don't just start to write white papers and so on, but have a vision behind that. And if you develop that vision and turn it into a narrative, and then make a structure of this is how we are going to tell that narrative through all kinds of thought leadership pieces, then you have something that's much more sustainable.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And before we close, Mignon, how has your experience been on this conversation with me on CommsCast the Reputation podcast?
Yeah, it's been so nice to meet you. And also, yes, thank you for your invitation and interest in our book. And that was really a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mignon. And what do you think of the kind of work that mediabrief.com and our podcasts that we do together?
I think it's so inspiring. I was amazed about what you do and also the different types of people that you invited. And for me, it's very interesting because I don't know the Indian communication field that well. So that's also why I'm always eager to connect because we have so much that we can learn from each other. And I think we face the same communication challenges. And then it's great to talk with somebody like you and also to see your videos and your podcasts.
So thank you very much for being on the show, Mignon, for joining us on CommsCast the Reputation podcast powered by Adfactors PR. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I certainly did, and I'm sure every young professional and old professional will find it very interesting and inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So that was this episode of CommsCast, a Reputation podcast powered by Factors PR, featuring the wonderful author and brilliant comms and PR professional, practitioner, leader, Mignon van Halderen, all the way from the Utrecht in the Netherlands. We meet again in CommsCast, another episode of CommsCast, the Reputation podcast powered by Factors PR. This is your host and friend Pavan R Chawla saying, take care, stay safe, and remember to remain purposeful for society, because leaders across businesses and all other areas must keep doing their duty to inspire societal change with their thought leadership. Bye bye.